So I am a collector of books. It is a hobby I have. I love collecting books. I love to collect all types of books. I love collecting children's books. Um, Part of my work, I like to analyze how literature has helped to shape the mentality of people through time. And because my area is K-12 education, I am constantly looking for those things that have shaped the mentality of children, and as they grow into adults. I also like to look at how the literature has shaped the mentality of American people, um, from racist times until these times that we think aren't racist. Just pause on that for a minute. Or I will say better times. And the reason why I do that is because we can see how literature has shaped our mentality unconsciously, even that literature that seems very innocent. And a lot of times when people, especially those of us in the Christian community, want to say, oh, racism is gone, or I'm really kind to Black people, we have Black friends, we fail to see the subtle ways that racism was present and still is present in unconscious ways. So I am going through some old books. So my hobby also makes me a little bit of a pack rat when it comes to books. So as my cousin says, my house does look like a library because every room has shelves of books, just about. And so I was just kind of going through some books. Sometimes I will throw out some things that I realize aren't useful to me in my research and my work. And then sometimes I discover a book in my possession that seems innocent, seems sweet. I really love old literature. It's from way back in the 60s, 70s. And it's a book that I remember from my childhood. Now, I'm a Black woman, grew up in a Black home, Black neighborhood, Black church. But my parents, for some reason, decided to place my brother and I in predominantly white Christian schools. And we also tended to go like to conferences, retreats, gatherings that were organized and sponsored by the evangelical community. And during that season of my life of being raised in that way, my parents were very conscious. They were very intentional about teaching us about our history. But during that time, they were constantly fighting the other messages that were presented to us as we grew up. Now, when my parents gave their lives to the Lord, they were very new to the faith. Even though my father grew up in the church, they were very new to just living this totally committed, consecrated Christian life that didn't just happen on Sundays and a Bible study, but that was affecting every single area of their life. And as a result, sometimes the literature and things they brought into their home were by publishers and authors that, although they claimed to love Jesus, did not really see Black people as equal. And they may not have even realized this was in their subconscious, but I want to share with you a book that I grew up with. I remember reading it in my home, and I believe that my parents had it in their home because it had some references to the Bible. It talked about the Lord. It talked about heaven. It talked about the gift of Jesus coming to earth. But I distinctly remember reading this book and realizing that no one in the book looked like me. So somehow I got my hands on this book in the 2020 times. I always do book sales, and when people are throwing out books, I'm like, oh, don't throw those, books are treasures. And I go through them, and I always find classic children's books. Now, this is probably backwards, but it's called The Little Angel. Now, this book is very interesting. It's a sweet little story about an angel in heaven who was struggling to find his significance. But I remember thinking, and this book has been around since I was very young. So this book was published. This is one of these classic Christian literature books, but it was published in 1966. So a little bit, I think that's right, a little bit before I was born. It's called The Children's Press of Chicago. And, this is right, yeah. 1900 and, oh, no, 1956. 1956, I think. That's the way. It came out in 1956. Okay, so here's the book. Little blonde child as an angel. As you go, and I remember reading this book as a child. And as you go through this book, I want you to notice something. Not one, there's this beautiful child. And it's so interesting because if I was reading this as a child and my parents had to constantly say, hey, not only white children are in heaven, or not, angels aren't only white. They're reading this and allowing us to read this to teach us about the Bible, but they had to constantly cancel the narrative that's presented here. It presents blonde children as angelic. All right, now if I'm getting that message, then here's the gatekeeper of heaven, old white man. Okay. And here he is, the littlest angel walking through heaven with all the saints, all white. What does this do for children? Children are so impressionable. This is why I talk a lot about, without going into theory, just logic, just being a good person. We should not be presenting, no matter what race your children are, what ethnicity your children are, you should not present, especially Christianity, as if only a certain race are the angelic beings. More angels, no brown people. The most brownest person, and I'm going to tell you that's why I loved this book, because I was hungry to see some sign of us represented in heaven. This one angel, the singer, had a little bit of color, a little bit of curly hair, but still very fair. Only person of color in the book. But I remember seeing that and claiming that angel as belonging to my heritage. And there he is, teaching a little angel about his place in heaven. But again, we go back. There we go. He's walking in glory. And the littlest angel, here we go, blonde hair, blue-eyed, sweet little angelic creature is finding his place. Now, I feel books that I do think representation is important. But I, as a black woman, don't even have my children read only books about black people, because the world does not revolve around them. And so no one should do that. Now, the story in this is a really cute story. But I do want to say it was written in the 50s, and without someone kind of unpacking some things about this book, any child who read this would come away thinking or having images planted in their mind that only white people are in heaven and only white people or fair people can be angels. This is a subtle way our country has allowed for the print, any type of media, to program thoughts into the minds of children. What that also does is it causes children of color to resist the gospel because they think it's not for them or about them. And so what I'm sharing this video with you to do is that this message of racism in Christianity goes far back, and this effort to keep it only about a certain race of people is doing nothing but keeping people away from the gospel of Jesus Christ. And actually, as sweet as this book is, it's unbiblical. Number one, the Bible does not describe any angelic creatures as being a part of a certain ethnicity or race. Second, the Church of Jesus Christ, founded in Acts, was made up of all types of ethnicities, from Africa to the Middle East to the West. And that is the gospel we need to do better with presenting to the world. If not, we are giving them a false narrative. We are misrepresenting the one who said, "For God so loved the world that he gave his son for the world." He does not elevate a race. We can talk all day that we're just trying to be relevant to whatever ethnicity we're reaching, but that is not biblical. God was intentional in creating a faith back in ancient times. It wasn't created when all these other denominations came into being. In ancient times, the early church was made up of all types of people from all over the world. And that is the gospel we have to teach our children.